We've now got two more rules to talk about. The first one is power of a power. To find the power of a power, you're going to multiply the exponents. This is important. So when you raise something to a power to another power, or raise an exponent to another exponent, you're going to multiply their exponents together. So we have our example with just symbols here, a raised to the m raised to the p. That gives me a raised to the m times p. So if we look at an example with actual numbers, we have b raised to the third, all raised to the fifth power. Since I have a power, the third power, being raised to another power, the fifth power, I'm going to multiply those powers together. So b raised to the third power raised to the fifth power is the same thing as b raised to the third times 5, or 3 times 5 is 15, so we could just write it as b raised to the 15th power. Then we have g raised to the 6th raised to the 7th power. Again, we have a variable with a power being raised to another power, so power to a power rule. We multiply exponents together, g raised to the 6 times 7, and 6 times 7 gives us 42, and that's where we get g raised to the 42nd power. The other idea we have to talk about is the power of a product. To find the power of a product, you find the power of each factor and multiply. That sounds kind of confusing. This is kind of like distributing an exponent. It's not exactly like distributing, okay, because technically we don't call it distributing, but it's the same idea. So if I have a times b in parentheses all raised to the m, what I'm going to do, I'm going to take that raised to the m and I'm going to apply it to each part. So I'm going to get a raised to the m power and b raised to the m power. So if I look at this example right here, I have negative 2xy cubed in parentheses all raised to the fifth power. What I'm going to end up doing, and you can see what they did, you apply that power to each one of them. So you get negative 2 raised to the fifth, x raised to the fifth, but then we have this y raised to the 15th. Where did they get that y raised to the 15th? Well, if you look here, we had y raised to the third power, and since I have a power to another power, I multiply the exponents, and that's where you get the y to the 15th. And then they simplified it by just finding out what negative 2 raised to the fifth power was, and negative 2 raised to the fifth power gives you negative 32, which is where they got this negative 32, x raised to the fifth, y to the 15th. So power to a power, multiply exponents. Power of a product, just distribute the exponent to each part inside the parentheses. This only works if there's multiplication on the inside, though. This would not work if you had a plus b raised to the m. That does not work. It's got to be only multiplication inside the parentheses. So let's look at our next example. We've got 2 raised to the third power, raised to the second power, raised to the fourth power. So here, if you notice, it says power of a power, so we're doing our power of a power rule. Remember that says when you have an exponent raised to another exponent, you multiply exponents. So I'm going to take this one step at a time. I have 2 raised to the third power raised to the second power. That means I'm going to have 2 raised to the 3 times 2, which will give me 2 raised to the 6th. So I have 2 raised to the 6th, all raised to the 4th power. Now I have another power of a power rule. So I'm going to have 2 raised to the 6th times 4, which will give me 2 raised to the 24th. So I get 2 raised to the 24th power. And in case you're wondering, 2 raised to the 24th power is the same thing as 16,777,216. Okay? I'm not so concerned with that part. I'm concerned with being able to figure out how you got 2 raised to the 24th power, and it comes from our power of a power rule. And when you have a power raised to another power, you just multiply your exponents.